Welcome to our program. You know, from day to day, we listen to a lot of things in the news about government, and we hear a lot of things from the national government and very often from the state government. But have you ever given a lot of thought to your local government and the various units that make up local government? That is going to be the focus of our series, which we are beginning today and will be going on for an ongoing basis, is to take a look at local government, how things operate, some of the financing and how things are generated as far as revenue from local government, and an idea about the various services that are provided. So it's a series that we're beginning today. We're very glad to have you along with us. And also joining us is the mayor of the Village of Addison, Rich Veenstra. So hello, Mayor.
Hey, Dan.
This is something that we've been wanting to do for some time now because people do need to know a lot about their local government, the various units, and how it operates.
Certainly we have. You know, what I've learned over the years is that people take it for granted. They don't question it. It's just there. But it's much more complicated and complex than people realize. And I was amazed talking to a group of residents several weeks ago, and they all, I assume, well informed about what's going on in the world today. But none of them realize that there's 13 different independent taxing bodies that represent their property tax bill. Mm-hmm. And each one of those 13 different agencies have their own unique boards of directors. They're elected, and they have unique roles and responsibilities separate from municipal government. So it occurred to me then, and we've talked about it in the past, we really need to educate our residents, because in the next 12 to 16 months, there are going to be big decisions that are going to be made regarding government, whether it's federal, state, or local levels.
And those are the elections that do not get a lot of participation.
Exactly.
Big spotlights on the national elections and even your statewide elections, certainly. But when it comes to those local units of government, and it's been said many times before, the units of government that impact you on a day-to-day basis more than the federal or state government would be those local units of government. You mentioned elections. Election season, of course, we never seem to be out of it, and there'll be elections coming up every couple of years for those local offices, and yet people still do not understand the importance of voting in those elections.
Nor do they really understand the unique responsibilities each of those have. I mean, countless times people come to me and say, how come A, B, and C doesn't happen? Well, A, B, and C are under the jurisdiction of a totally different governmental agency that the mayor and our board of directors have no control over. So understanding who makes the decisions and why they make the decisions in each of those different circumstances is critical for an informed voter to make decisions as to how we are performing as elected officials.
And you mentioned that a group of residents were talking to you about, or you were engaged with them in having a conversation, and there is a unique opportunity in local government. They had the opportunity to talk to the mayor about it and express just a kind of a basic thought or concern, and you're like, hey, you know what? We really need to address this, which is why we're doing this series of programs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, our topic is going to be, our overall topic is going to be to give you an idea about those services that are provided at the local level, discuss their various services that are available, how those services get delivered, and also the various scope of services that are involved. So, Mayor Veenstra, thank you very much for spending a few minutes to lead off our series. We are excited to present it to our residents of Addison. We hope that the things that you learn in this series, you'll be able to share with your neighbors and fellow members of the Village of Addison within our community, so they are better informed about how local government operates. We'll take a break. Coming back, we will be talking about how the village property tax system works, which is a very interesting and intriguing subject. You might want to get a pencil and paper handy to jot down a couple of notes. And joining us will be Colleen Wit, the Finance Director and Treasurer for the Village of Addison. That'll be coming up in just a moment. Welcome back to our program. Well, as promised, we are going to be talking about property taxes and give you a property tax overview from the Village of Addison. So we hope you have a pencil and a little paper ready. You might want to jot down a couple of notes or make sure you're paying attention to some things coming up, because I'll bet you we're going to cover a lot of things that maybe you didn't know about how property taxes are generated here in the Village of Addison. So joining us is our subject expert on this subject, and she is Colleen Wit, the Village of Addison's Finance Director and Village Treasurer. So Colleen, welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, and it's a big subject. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about Colleen. How long have you been with the Village of Addison County?
So I've been with the Village of Addison approximately just over 2.5 years.
Okay, very good. Taking on the assistant role, and then
Yes,
now the
originally
finance director.
I was hired as the Assistant Finance Director, and approximately a year and a half in, I was promoted to the Finance Director.
Oh, wow. Okay, pretty quick. Yep. Where were you working before coming to Addison?
So prior to working with the Village, I worked for the Township of Joliet. I worked with them for about 8 years as their Finance Director.
And you are a CPA.
I am.
Is that kind of a standard for people who work in the public sector, such as yourself in finance, is having a credential like a CPA?
I think it's very important to have your CPA license to be in this field, for sure. I guess one way you would look at it is like you have in the accounting field, you start with a bookkeeper and then an accountant, and then the next level would be a CPA.
Okay. So a lot of people are working their way up through something like that if accounting and finance is the area that they're going to work in, particularly in the public sector.
Correct.
Great. Well, we're going to talk about property taxes. It's a fascinating subject, but it's something you deal with on a day-to-day basis, and it is very important. So why don't you walk us through, Colleen, kind of the initial steps, the things that we need to know, some foundation about our property taxes here in Addison.
Good. I can do that. So property taxes, like you said, they're assessed and collected as kind of a very complex cycle. So to start the cycle is we need to get an assessment of your home, and the county and township assessors are the ones that are responsible for that. And basically your assessed value on your home is about 1/3 of the fair market value. So again, the fair market value of your home would be what it would sell for on the market, right?
Okay.
So you would take about 1/3 of that, and that's your assessed value. Then the Illinois Department of Revenue applies what they call a state equalization factor, and that's usually just 1. So that's easy in the
So it's times 1.
That's correct.
So basic math here, we're talking about a multiplier of 1 then, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
You got me so far. We're good.
Okay. So the next step would be the taxing districts pass their tax levies, okay? So a tax levy is basically the amount of money that the taxing district is looking to receive through your property taxes in order to fund their upcoming expenditures for operations.
So, and that's a unit of government asking for that money, like the local unit.
That is correct. That is correct.
But different units within, for example, in Addison. So everybody has a different tax levy.
That is correct.
Right, okay.
That is correct. So the amount is determined by each taxing body, okay, and by their elected officials. And ultimately, the amounts that are levied is what's going to dictate what the rate is on your property tax bill. So in Addison, there's actually 13 taxing districts.
Right, Mayor had mentioned that.
The Mayor had mentioned that, right? And they're all included on your tax bill. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit,
Okay.
who those taxing districts are.
Yep.
From there, the county clerk then takes all of that information from the tax levies, and they calculate the tax rate. So for every combination of the taxing districts in DuPage County. Okay. So in 2022 for Addison, remember there are 13 taxing bodies, and the tax rate came back at 7.3651.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a lot of information, right? So let's take that information now and just, I'm going to run through an example of, okay, say a home in Addison has a $350,000 fair market value, okay? So we're going to start with that. All right. And we take that $350,000, and as I said, we are trying to get the assessed valuation. So 1/3 of that would bring it down to $116,620. Back to the easy state equalization factor. Times 1. We're still at the $116,620. Okay. And then we can deduct things like the homeowner's exemption, which is $6,000. Okay. So now you're down to $110,620.
All right. Right.
So that's your equalized assessed value, okay?
EAV.
EAV.
Very important.
Yes,
term,
it is. And you're going to hear that term a lot.
Okay.
Equalized
assessed valuation, it starts with that 1/3 of the fair market value. You got to start with that.
That is correct.
Okay.
Start with your fair market value is correct.
Great. All right.
And then again, remember how we talked about as each taxing district turns in their tax levy, the DuPage County clerk comes up with the tax rate for Addison as a whole. So we're going to take that equalized assessed value, we divide it by 100, and we times it by that rate. Now again, in 2022, that tax rate was the 7.3651. So that brings you to a balance of $8,147. So again, you would expect a home in Addison with a fair market value of $350,000. You would expect their tax bill to be about $8,147.
And let's just take a moment here to again stress 13 jurisdictions
That's
of
correct.
local government made up that dollar amount. It's not $8,147 to the village of Addison.
That
I
is
think
correct.
that's really important to stress that. When people get their property tax bill, they think that every penny comes to one Friendship Plaza in Addison, and that's not correct.
That is not correct, right.
Okay.
And we're going to see that in these examples.
Great,
So
okay.
let's go through those 13 taxing
Sure.
bodies, okay? So we
Good.
have the County of DuPage,
Okay.
we have Health Department, the Forest Preserve District, DuPage Airport Authority, Addison Township, Addison Township Roads, the Village of Addison, the Village of Addison Library, the Addison Park District, the Addison Fire District, the Grade School District 4, and the High School District 88, as well as the College of DuPage. And that is how we come up with the 13 different taxing bodies.
And if you live in other areas in Addison, you may not necessarily have Grade School District 4 and High School District 88. You could have other school districts, but for the purposes of Addison, we're using them as our example.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Very
that is
good.
correct. So let's see. As previously mentioned, each of the taxing bodies have their own tax rate that total this 7.3651, okay? So we can look through this.
Right.
And you can see on here that the rates vary by each taxing district. They can be as low as 0.0139 all the way up to 2.1765. So the property tax bill does separate out the amount of tax rate for any pension fund that the taxing body has or that they're levying for. So in this illustration, the pension portion is over on the right-hand column.
Okay.
So looking at that, you can see the pension fund portion is 10% of your total tax bill. Now that 10% is for all taxing bodies, all 13 taxing bodies. Okay? So let's talk dollars on this.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this $8,147. How is that broken down between these taxing districts? So you can see of that amount, only $497 is actually going to the Village of Addison.
Take a good look at your screen now, because we're showing this in a bar chart. So kind of the center point of the screen is what Colleen just mentioned, the Village of Addison, and you'll see that noted there, $497 of our sample property tax bill.
That's correct. And you move one over to the right, and you're going to see the Village of Addison Library, and they're about $426.
Okay.
The Park District is $394. The Fire District is $758. And then you can see something like the School District 4 is all the way up at $2,408 and so forth, okay? So many of us don't realize that our property tax bills are going to all 13 taxing districts, not just one.
That's
so
correct.
here's an
That's
example
correct. And
of
here
this.
they all are out in front of you right now. You can see that the districts, if I may, Colleen, that are more county-based are smaller because DuPage County has almost 1 million people in it. It's a larger area. But once you start to get into your Addison districts, Village and Park and Fire and so on, now you see the rates starting, the dollar amount starting to go up.
That is correct.
Yep.
That is correct. And you can see it varies greatly. You know, you're going all the way down to $15, all the way up to $2,408.
Right. And the pension funds are indicated there also, and that is for all of the districts, I think, except for the Airport Authority. Is that correct? Do they still?
The Airport Authority is correct. That is
Yeah.
the Airport, College of DuPage, they do not have their pension funds on here
Okay,
either.
they don't levy for that. All right.
So back to your point on this graph, you can see all the way to the right is the pension funds. So $822 of your tax bill is going towards the pension funds of all the entities together.
Okay, all 13.
All 13 of them.
Got
Okay.
it. All right.
So next we're going to look at percentages. Some
Yes.
people prefer percentages over dollar amounts. So when you're looking at that, again, to your point, let's start in the center. And the Village of Addison is getting about just over 6% of the tax bill is for the Village of Addison. The Addison Library is getting 5.23%. The Park District is 4.83%. The Fire District is just over 9%. And then School District 4 is 29.55%. So another way of saying this is, so the Village of Addison, for every dollar that you spend on your property tax bill, the Village of Addison will get 6 cents of that dollar. The Addison Park District will get just under 5 cents.
Yes.
The School District will get about 29 cents. And then the pension funds together, again, will get about 10 cents.
Right. This is very common, especially in Illinois. School districts rely heavily on property taxes
Yes,
to fund
this is
themselves,
true.
whereas municipal and other local units of government have other forms of revenue.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
So this is very typical of most municipalities, especially in Illinois.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yes, it is. So now we're going to group all of the property taxes together.
For those who need a little break and
Right.
want some color in their life, here we go. Here's a pie chart with color in it.
So here's your pie chart, right? So looking at that 22 tax bill, 61% is going to education.
Yeah.
And that is very common.
Very common.
The Fire Protection District is getting 13%. The Village of Addison is getting 10%, and so forth.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. Don't forget townships now cover more than just the one municipality. They cover larger areas, but they do have their own unit of government. In fact, they have two. There's the township government, and then there's the township road district, which Colleen mentioned earlier when we were looking at that list. Separate entity for the purposes of levying taxes.
That is correct.
The township road district.
So it is very important to remember that each of these taxing bodies have their own governing boards, and they determine their own property tax levies. So one governing board does not have say, or can't say how another government body operates,
Right.
nor how they can't help them determine their tax levy either. So
Right.
that's important to remember.
They don't meet and collectively decide that amount. They all have their own special needs that are used for their agencies. Their
That's correct.
jurisdictions.
That is correct.
Yep.
So in the end, the property tax bills, just so you know, they are paid to the DuPage County Treasurer. They're due twice a year in 2 installments. One is on June 1st and the other one is on September 1st. You can go ahead and pay your property tax bills right at their location in Wheaton, or they do have an online portal,
They do. Yep.
so that you can use that as well.
When it goes to the county, Colleen, is it the county treasurer then that then disperses the, because the county, as you just said, they collect.
They collect, and then they will disperse to the local municipalities.
How often does that happen? Is it one, you just get one payment in the course of a year? Or?
No, actually, we get about 7 payments throughout the
Oh,
year.
goodness, okay. So as they're collecting it, the money's going out to the agencies.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right, so it kind of starts local, goes up to the county, the treasurer collects it, the county collector collects it, and disperses it, goes right back to the local agencies then. All of the agencies we're talking about.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay.
That is correct.
All right.
All right.
You know, and you said it was complicated at the beginning, but I think once you start to understand how those rates are determined, what the fair market value is, and how you're part of that, it becomes maybe a little more understandable. It still gets complicated. The best thing to do is when you receive that property tax bill in the mail, which happens in the spring typically, is to read it and carefully look over it and understand these things and obviously ask questions.
Yeah.
Colleen, thank you very much for coming in and discussing this issue, which is complicated, as we say, but also is really important, and then people can understand that. And in future programs, we will be discussing how things are put into business here at the Village of Addison and how that money gets generated and where the money is appropriated to within the various departments. So we want to thank Mayor Veenstra for joining us earlier, Colleen Wit from the Village of Addison Finance Department for joining us, and we thank you for joining us as well. I'm Don Weiss. Thank you for joining us.